So there's a pretty fascinating article out in Politico. Now, what you've been seeing all across the board when it comes to progressive congressional members, AOC, Ilhan Omar, etc., especially AOC, she's really been on a warpath lately in terms of going after not only corporate Democrats, but really hardcore on Republicans who are immediately trying to shaft progressives and push Joe Biden towards a right wing direction, namely John Kasich of Ohio. Now, nobody really knows what John Kasich actually did that we saw that tangibly helped Joe Biden, obviously. Trump got demolished in his home state of Ohio by 8 points. So nobody really knows what he did, but he was very quick to sort of shaft the progressive movement. Now, before this election happened, all these progressives basically made a pact saying we're going to support Joe Biden, but on day one we're essentially going to push and we're going to yell at them and hold their feet to the fire. So Rashida Tlaib is the most recent one doing this because progressives have a lot of different enemies, and some of those enemies, all of them actually, are starting to attack them. Now, it says Tlaib lashes out at centrist Dems over election debacle. I can't be silent. So it talks about how there is a memo that's going around that is written by Justice Democrats and a bunch of progressive organizations. So his political article reads, Rashida Tlaib isn't apologizing for wanting to yank money away from bad police departments. She has no second thoughts about her embrace of the Black Lives Matter movement or for wanting to aggressively fight climate change. House Democrats lost seats instead of expanding their majority, underperforming expectations across the board. And moderates have pounced on liberals like Tlaib, funny terminology by the way, the Michigan congresswoman, accusing them of handing conservatives a set of slogans and policies to scare voters. So this is essentially at the source of, there's a lot of backlash going on to Pelosi and Democratic House leadership because they severely underperformed in the House and the Senate for that matter, but they really seem to flop on the House level. And so what centrist Democrats and Republicans alike are trying to do is they're trying to pounce and basically shit on progressives. That's what they're trying to do. So centrist Democrats are trying to say, all of this defund the police stuff and all this stuff, it cost our fellow centrists these elections. But it says, but Tlaib and other House progressives don't want to hear it. It all amounts to unfair blame casting designed to shame them into staying quiet. They say, right as Democrats gain control of the White House. We're not going to be successful for silencing districts like mine, said Tlaib, who told her colleagues something similar during a contentious call last week. Me not being able to speak on behalf of many of my neighbors right now, many of which are black neighbors, means me being silenced. I can't be silenced. We are not interested in unity that asks people to sacrifice their freedom and their rights any longer. And if we truly want to unify our country, we have to really respect every single voice. We say that so willingly when we talk about Trump supporters, but we don't say that willingly for my black and brown neighbors and from LGBTQ neighbors or marginalized people. It goes on to say only a few days after the presidential race was called, Tlaib and other progressive leaders are making it clear there will be no honeymoon for Joe Biden. They have their own takeaways from the election. Top progressive groups are circulating a post-election memo that criticizes centrists for playing into Republicans' divide and conquer racism. On Wednesday, Justice Democrats and the Sunrise Movement launched a campaign urging Biden to seize the, quote, climate mandate and laid out recommendations for 13 cabinet positions. And it goes on to basically explain that there is a list of cabinet suggestions that progressives have, Justice Democrats and these other groups, and arguably even more importantly, they sort of have a blacklist. They're saying, someone like a Rahm Emanuel, we will not accept someone like this to be in the administration. So there's a lot of blame, and obviously progressives have a lot of enemies that are going to pounce at any possible opportunity to try to silence or shaft them. And so Rashida is basically saying, no, we're not going to accept being on the loser's end when we don't deserve it of the House underperforming because, there is talks of centrist Democrats wanting to replace Nancy Pelosi. But they don't want to replace Nancy Pelosi with someone more progressive. They want to put in somebody who's maybe even more centrist than Nancy Pelosi is. I know that that's hard to believe, actually. So it's pretty interesting to see. But pretty crazy stuff going on here as we are seeing progressive Democrats really coming out in full force against Joe Biden and corporate Democrats in general right now.